So, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Turn 5 podcast. We're a couple of members light this week as Chris is MIA and Nia is scrubbing a patio. This week we'll be covering, well, the action of last week we didn't cover. So the Formula 2 and the W Series races, as well as looking ahead to this weekend's Hungarian Grand Prix. But before we get into any of that, we are going to have a talk about the stewards. And by talk, I mean roast. So, Alex, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, well, I mean, very on topic, of course. I think we've all just about calmed down from the events of Silverstone. Probably a good thing that we've got this this gap to digest what happened, because otherwise, I think if we had back-to-back races, I think some people would be a little bit hot-headed going into Hungary, and it may not end too well. But yeah, I think it's a timely topic, isn't it? The stewarding after we had two. Obviously, we had the big one. We had the Hamilton-Verstappen collision at Silverstone, didn't we? But then we also had George Russell in the sprint race got a penalty, didn't he, for the collision with Carlos Sainz, which, I mean, we've covered Hamilton and Verstappen so many times. Everyone has.
Yeah.
But I think well, we mainly want to talk about the inconsistency, don't we, of the stewarding. And also, one thing I feel like what they do is base penalties off outcome. I think we touched on this last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
With obviously the big collision, which we've exhausted. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if we start with the Silverstone example, the Russell and Sainz collision. I mean, how many times have we heard, "Oh, stewards don't give penalties on lap one," and well, they finally changed it, didn't they, at the British Grand Prix? But
yeah,
for two incidents that, in my opinion, were very harsh penalties. I think, how many times have we seen, the Russell Sainz one? It was, how many times have we seen, drivers bang wheels on the first lap or something? And I think Sainz was given a 5-second penalty because, it just happened to push him across the grass down to the back of the grid.
Yeah.
And then obviously we've mentioned the classic example of Austria, where Leclerc effectively swiped Gasly's, gave him a puncture, didn't he? And then that led to him spinning into, was it Latifi, and
he basically hit about the back half of the grid.
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, I mean, it's inconsistency, isn't it? This is where, I mean, I think it's important to point out that no two incidents are ever the same. Like, we compare like all these different incidents, don't we, from different races. But even when people try and compare Hamilton Verstappen to other like overtakes at Cops to say, oh, it can be done, it's important to like the angle of the cars coming into the corner, obviously the speed they're taking, it's the fuel load, everything like that. But yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about, I guess.
Yeah, a base value. What we do is compare what the stewards deem as like for like offences, because they're worded the same in the official documents. So it'll be car 63 caused a collision with car 55. That document, so it's that rule set, and car 44 caused a collision with car 33. Same rule set, different document, sort of thing. But yeah, no two crashes will ever be identical. Yes, there can be similar circumstances, but it will never be a carbon copy. But even with Michael Massey going, oh yeah, no, we definitely don't base anything on the outcome. Recent penalties have made that somewhat hard to believe. I mean, we can even just in the last sort of 3-4 races, you can see it. The biggest one for me is the difference between France and Austria, where Gasly's cut right across Norris, forced Norris wide. Gasly's gone wide himself, but because Norris got past anyway, and it was all tarmac and anything, Gasly didn't get a penalty. But the same style of incident happens in Austria, where Norris defends, Perez has to go out wide, but Perez ends in a gravel trap and loses 5 or 6 places, suddenly we're dishing out 5-second penalties. So I don't think there's a whole lot of backbone to what Massey is saying where it's not dealt with by the outcome. I feel like that is considered, and I don't think I like it.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that obviously this whole thing about the outcome, the Austria ones, I mean, at least they were consistent there, as in the Norris one on Perez set a precedent, didn't it? And Perez ended up getting the 2.
Yeah, they backed themselves into a corner.
That's the problem. I mean, they're generally consistent in like specific races, but not from
across
race to race.
Season.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could argue, for example, the Imola start, Verstappen technically forced Hamilton off the track when he was alongside, didn't he? In theory, I'm not saying it should be a penalty.
I feel like they've probably taken the conditions into account there as well.
Yeah.
I think Spain's worse when Verstappen just storms through the inside for the first turn. With Lewis having to go wide.
I mean, that could have been. I mean, in theory, Verstappen technically there has escaped a penalty because Hamilton jumped out of the way. So, is that where you start thinking about? Well, maybe at Silverstone, for example, if Verstappen had run wide like Leclerc did for the overtake, then Hamilton wouldn't have got a penalty. So,
what the part of my brain is like, what if Verstappen had just taken a really wide line round Copse and Hamilton then hadn't made the corner anyway, because it didn't look like he was going to make that corner? What would the Stewards have done then? Because they both run wide. So are they just going to get a track limits warning? Like, it's a weird one, isn't it? So,
well, the Gasly Norris one, they both went wide, didn't they, in the end? So in theory, I mean, say Verstappen played it. We spoke about the championship mindset. If he'd been ultra cautious, just to not get damage, maybe. I mean, Hamilton, if he hadn't made the corner, would have had to give the place back, wouldn't he? In theory,
yes.
So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. You're going back to sort of like Bahrain incidents there now.
Yeah, that's a good point actually.
So
that's another one where, I mean, technically Bahrain could have ended in a crash if Verstappen didn't run off the track. In theory, couldn't it?
I mean, he had it was a snap of oversteer mid corner, and he literally just did it. The only reason he ran wide was to stop himself from going round. Yeah, and they were just like, now give the place back.
Yeah, so it goes back to the whole point about the outcome.
Yeah,
in theory, like maybe actually Hamilton, where if Verstappen had tried to make the corner, they'd have collided, and Hamilton would have got the blame for squeezing him off track, wouldn't he?
So
I mean, it's also it is complex. I'll give them that. It's very. Yeah, you're always going to find two decisions that contradict each other across however many years of F1, aren't you?
I mean, you see it in all sports, really. Even with the introduction of VAR in football, we're still getting dodgy decisions. I think the most clean-cut things would be tennis and cricket. Tennis, you've got Hawkeye. Is it in or out? It was in. Done. Easy peasy. Cricket, they've got, what's it called, like Ultra Edge or something?
Yeah, they've got a DRS, but it's obviously, I can't remember what it stands for, but yeah, it's
Decision Review
System. Yeah,
that's the one. Yeah.
But obviously with those, you only have a certain amount of appeals in a game or whatever.
I guess it's because F1's based on opinion, isn't it? That's the problem.
Yes.
Like so is football.
Yeah.
But
I feel like it's one of those things that you hear it said in other sports a lot. The rules require clarification. I think it was the last couple of years. The handball rule has changed a bit in football, because we were seeing a lot of like point blank range, it's hit their arm, penalty was given sort of thing. And then there was a clarification, and you're seeing it less often. But I feel like that's slightly more tricky with Formula One, given the amount of parameters you're having to deal with. But the stewards don't help themselves by the fact that at the end of every single section, of offences and incidents and everything, it always says the stewards reserve the right to do whatever, basically. And it's like you need to set a set series of things, not just have, oh well, it was kind of like this, so we're going to kind of give you a penalty.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, like you said, there's like an unlimited amount of things that can happen in F1, isn't there?
Yeah.
Technically speaking, in terms of stewarding. But how many times do we see it where an incident happens and we don't know what the rule is, if that makes sense? Like,
I mean, yeah, that's the thing.
We had the whole track limits debate, didn't we? No one knew what was allowed.
Yeah, and then
they changed it, didn't they? Well, midway through the race, actually, in Bahrain.
Officially, they didn't. They just got on the radio and said, "Yeah, stop doing that." It was never actually policed. But yeah, that's the thing. It's the sporting and the technical regulations are all so complex that average Joes don't stand a chance. Like other sports, it's pretty clear cut. You know, there's this rule and that's it. But in Formula One, it's like, oh yeah, we've got track limits, but in some cases it's the white line, in some cases it's the other side of the curb, and in some cases we just don't even bother with it. Like it's not helpful. Like F1 have really been striving to bring new fans to the sport with stuff like Drive to Survive and the really sort of going at it sort of social media approach that they've taken. But I feel like they need to sort out the rule set so that people can understand it from at home. It takes, that's the thing, like it's great that we have the pundits and ex-racers and everything that they can sort of break it down for us and do that, but like that should only be fringe cases. We shouldn't be requiring those conversations every weekend of what actually does this rule mean and why has he broken this rule, that sort of thing. So
I think one thing you mentioned, ex-drivers and pundits, one thing that stood out for me from the Silverstone incident is amongst all the hysteria, pretty much every ex-driver, even current driver, pundit said, it's probably a racing incident, isn't it? Which is easy to say. I mean, it's
very much the I'm not taking a side and nobody can hate me for it.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it is the sensible route.
Yeah,
because we want hard racing, but we want There's a difference between hard and clean. Well, no, there's hard racing and then there's dangerous racing. We want hard racing. We don't want Pasta Maldonado racing.
I mean, one thing I will say is the stewards, and it's more sensible nowadays than you get some of the ridiculous penalties we saw like back in the day. Yeah, do you remember like the Hamilton one at Spa where he lost the win for the overtake?
Because he ceded the position, but he didn't cede it well enough.
Yeah, and he got like a 30-second penalty for that. Where even if that happened today and they deemed it an offence, it'd be like 5 seconds, wouldn't it? Or just give the place back or something like that. But one thing I will say is the point about everyone saying it's a racing incident. I think the stewards feel the pressure a lot, and I always go back to the Canada 2019 incident where, in my opinion, they made the right decision because Vettel did rejoin dangerously, but there was so much hysteria that I think we came to Monza in the next, for example. Can you imagine Leclerc? I think personally, Leclerc, he's forced Hamilton off the track technically, hasn't he?
I mean, by the letter of the law, he has. He has not left a car's width.
But then again, are we being hypocritical because I said, the Norris Perez one isn't a penalty, for example? But
that's I feel like they're different because that's mid corner.
Yeah.
Whereas you're talking about an incident at the end of a very high speed section of track. And once you hit the brakes, that's it. You've committed to your line at that point. Whereas the point where Perez went wide in turn 4, you're very much on throttle trying to put the power down and get out of it. So,
I mean, this goes back to the point. If Hamilton breaks his front wing there, Leclerc probably gets a penalty, doesn't he?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, he probably will. But again, I still feel like instance like that. It's a Ferrari. Can you imagine the outcry? If,
God, they would have been,
you know,
brutally murdered.
I mean,
Yeah, but that's where they need to have the backbone and put their foot down.
If it takes,
I don't think they do. Yeah,
you see it with, like, I'm gonna go back to football again. So that you see it with VAR. They're at a different place. They're not at the stadium. There's no risk to them whatsoever. If that's what we need to get the stewards to have a backbone and make stern decisions, then move them off site. Put them in a separate room. I don't care. I don't care where the stewards are, as long as they've got all of the same information they have. Like, the only difference would be that the drivers wouldn't go to the steward's office. They'd go to a room set up for Zoom with the stewards, and that'd be it. I don't get why we're so hell-bent on having the stewards be at the race and then not making the right decisions, potentially due to external factors.
I mean, that is, yeah, it's a good point. But and also, yeah, going back to the thing about, you know, Ferrari. I mean, I think gone are the days of, you know, Ferrari international assistants, whatever. But
yeah, we're in Mercedes. We're in the mafia region
the mafia
now.
Era now, aren't we? Yeah. But I think Ferrari have had, since that incident in Canada, I think they've had one. I mean, I'm probably forgetting, like, you know, some blocking incident or something. But from what I can remember, they've had one penalty, and that was when Leclerc took out Verstappen at the start of that Japan race. And even then, they said, didn't they? They didn't investigate it to start with, even though it was so clear cut.
Yeah, that was a
this is
farce.
where I feel like they're a little bit. They don't have the backbone, like you said, Ben. I don't think they do, personally.
Yeah.
And they play up to, you know, evening things up, like with the penalty at Silverstone.
Well, I mean, evening things up would have been retire the car, Lewis.
Yeah. As in trying to keep as many people happy as possible.
I mean,
even if
I feel like in the long run, maybe they have, because Lewis still won anyway. The championship fight is now very close, but they shouldn't be looking at things as what's going to make things more interesting. It should be what it doesn't even matter as, like, what do they deem as fair. It's what is in the rules. What is the appropriate punishment for said offense? Distribute it. Done. It's like when the teams were, McLaren radioed the FIA in Baku saying that, I think it was Yuki hadn't slowed down enough under double yellows, and Michael was saying nobody has. I mean, just dish out the 5-second penalties, give everyone the penalty points. It's not hard. It's literally just like a couple of buttons, done, and it appears on a TV graphic. And then everyone else suddenly has an extra 2 points on their super license, and Lando Norris would have had a race ban.
Yeah.
So and then we're talking about,
which would have been
how Lando got banned.
Yeah, and then we'd be talking about how the fact that he pushed Sergio Perez wide in Austria was a joke, and he should never have been banned.
I still don't understand, like, well, I mean, we've talked about the penalty points before, haven't we? But that, for me, it just doesn't make sense. How, I mean, first, you can look at it a number of ways, but how can Lando Norris have? Oh, and does he still have the most?
Yeah,
yeah. It doesn't make sense. Well, I think he's had what, 2. I mean, he's had the incident with Stroll in Canada, and also the one in Portugal, which, by the way, Stroll got a penalty for effectively pinching Norris on the apex, and yet Verstappen technically did that at Silverstone, maybe. And yeah, it's a different story, but yeah, this is where I said off there. I called Christian Horner a hypocrite, didn't I? I
mean, I think everyone in Formula One,
yeah,
has a tendency to be a bit,
but
which is no excuse to, like, not distribute penalties. It's more of a reason to distribute them more evenly, because then you don't give anyone the room to be a hypocrite.
Yeah, that's true.
If they distributed the penalties the same way across all the events that we've talked about, we wouldn't even be talking about them. It would be a non-plus thing. We'd have mentioned it last week as like a 30 second segment of, oh yeah, so and so got 2 penalty points because they did the exact same thing that the other driver did 3 weeks prior. So there it was. Like, but now we're talking about people running people wide and getting 2 penalty points. Kimi causing a collision and getting 3 penalty points, but Lewis causing a collision and only getting 2 penalty points. There's levels of inconsistency that don't really make sense or add up in some ways. So
it's just common sense. Like,
yeah,
they try and play by the rule book too much, but the rule book changes race after race, doesn't it? That's the problem. And it's like when you look at the Russia example. I mean, punish teams for mistakes that teams make, and punish drivers for mistakes that drivers make. And if it's clearly, a racing incident, okay, if the outcome is harsh on one driver, so be it. But it's like, I mean, to be fair, the point I would make is, I think someone said it after the Norris-Perez one, if we don't punish Norris for that, drivers will start doing the equivalent of like a professional foul in football, won't they? Where they'll run someone off the track knowing that the consequences will be bad, like much worse for if there's a gravel trap, for example. But if they won't get a penalty for it, but then, yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? To be fair to them.
Yeah, but at the same time, Charles pushed Lewis off. Lewis had to go through the runoff and lost all that time because he was right behind him. And when he comes out from the escape road runoff, he's lost a lot of time. Charles just got a black and white flag. We haven't really seen the black and white flag since. Where's it gone? Why aren't we bringing it out? Because it is essentially,
especially for Ferrari at Monza, didn't it?
Exactly.
They don't want to give a penalty.
It's essentially a yellow card. So why aren't we using it? Well, actually, no, it's not a yellow card, because a yellow card is actually like a proper warning. I guess it's like the referee's final warning of, you do that again, you are going in the book. So I don't know. I feel like I want to see more black and white flags, because then it gives us an indication that, hey, the stewards are taking notice, and they do want to see hard racing, but that was marginally over the line, because that gives them a bit more room. Because if that takes out the professional foul sort of situation, because if they do it and it's obvious, then they can just distribute the penalty straight away. But if it's like marginal, like say Perez only dipped 2 wheels in the gravel instead, lost 3 places, not 5, black and white flag, fine, that was marginal, but it's not career ending. So yeah.
Also, you can maybe
track limits as well, though, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.
You've seen it at Monaco, Rolando.
Yeah.
I mean, you could maybe get a penalty point for an incident that is a black and white flag, couldn't you? You just, bit of common sense, 1 penalty point, so you can't keep just doing it in the knowledge that you're not going to get a penalty. You're just going to get warnings, in theory. But I mean, the penalty point system just doesn't make sense to me. Hamilton almost getting 4 until they changed it, didn't they, back to 2 for the Russia practice starts, for example. And also the Monza pit lane one as well, which was, I mean, it's really down to the team, isn't it, to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. But at the same point, that's a safety side of things. So I can kind of see it.
I mean,
yeah, but at the same time, Lewis has the flashing light, and I mean, yeah, it's a whole lot.
It was a weird one, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm more thinking of the fact that Lewis's Silverstone incident has resulted in the same number of penalty points as Yuki crossing a white line twice in Austria.
Yeah, I mean, technically it is technically it's the driver's fault, but yeah, that's one where it's more appropriate for a warning or maybe a time penalty. Like, what if someone crossed the white line 12 times over the course of a season and got a race ban, did nothing else wrong? I'd just be
that's what I said last week, because Gasly got a penalty point for starting out of position in Spain, because he was like that far outside of his box. You do that 12 times in a season, and you're banned.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a bit.
I mean, yeah,
if that actually happened, but
yeah. The point stands. You can be less than a meter outside of your start box, like what's the word I'm thinking of? Cumulatively over the course of the season, and you end up with a race ban. when
Yeah.
you haven't really gained anything.
So I'd
yeah.
argue penalty points should be for actual things that the driver is at fault for that are actually dangerous, not even necessarily a race, not even necessarily an incident. Like, so okay, give Norris a 5-second penalty for forcing Perez off the track. It's not dangerous.
No.
Like, maybe okay, you could argue Sonoda crossing the white line technically is, but I'd argue something like maybe when Perez came back on the track after his spin in the sprint race, that was quite dangerous. Give him a penalty point for that, but
Yeah,
not
because
necessarily a time
he
penalty.
almost got absolutely clouted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see it for dangerous things. I don't want to see it for marginal infringements. I'm trying to think of. I mean, okay, Bottas spinning in a pit lane. Yes, dangerous. There are people around. Penalty points, understandable. But then, no, unsafe
Blocking
release is just blocking and qualifying. Yeah, it's not okay. It is slightly dangerous because someone's coming up you at a rate of knots, but at the same time, all it's done is ruin a lap. So give them a grid drop. They don't need to. You don't always need a punishment and penalty points to go together. Why do they have to exist as a single entity? Why can't we have you have a grid drop, but it was just like we have grid drops for gearbox changes. They don't get a penalty point for that. Like, come on. It's yeah, I don't know. I feel like F1 has a big opportunity next year to really nail this, because they've changed the sporting regulations, the technical regulations. They've changed the cars completely. They've added in a budget cap. Now, if they can just get the rules right and the officiating of said rules right, the whole sport will be so much better off.
It's just common sense. That's what they need. And as long as that brings well, technically, if you apply common sense to every incident, consistency should come, shouldn't it?
Yes.
So as long as that, yeah, it's a bit of a complex idea, but should do, I think. I mean, the only other point about the stewards for me is sometimes they take so long to make a decision, don't they? I mean, Silverstone was kind of understandable because you had Toto Wolff emailing, you had Christian Horner.
Yes, that is something I want to touch on.
George Russell, didn't he? Got the penalty about. Well, I remember I was having like dinner at the campsite and I found out about it. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, that document got released at 26 minutes past 8 in the evening, because I'm looking at that one at a minute. He got a grid drop of 3 places and 1 penalty point, so he's on 7 points in a 12-month period. But what I wanted to say was, other sports, you do not talk to the referee. You don't talk your opinion. You just, the referee's word is final, done, deal with it. Rugby, if you talk to the referee will tell you to go away because he will not hear it. I think, I want to say his name's Nigel Owens. He's a Welsh referee. He's hilarious, and he just doesn't take anything from anyone. And he's like, look, I'll do my job, you do yours. In hockey, if you talk to the umpire, you'll get a card. It doesn't even have to be directly at the umpire. You can voice your opinion on anything that happened, and if the ref hears it, they can give you a card. So why are we allowing? I mean, they've changed the rules apparently, so you're not allowed to go up to the steward's office or something. There's been an introduction of a new directive or something. But why was that even a thing? I just don't. It's the same as like trying to influence a jury, isn't it? You can't get away with that in court. Why are we allowing it in sport? It's just, the stewards should be the stewards, not like the only time you should go to the stewards is when they have asked you to come and see them. Other than that, it should just be they deal with it.
I mean, yeah, and obviously if it's like a safety concern, you should still be able to speak to them.
Yes,
If there's a,
but
yeah,
that's
you know,
what
like,
if it's a safety concern, you deal with the race director. You go
Yeah,
to
that's true.
Michael.
but I mean, yeah, the lobbying essentially, isn't it?
Yeah,
Of the
it's
stewards.
not on.
That's, I mean, I guess the issue is that they might have some data or something that clearly proves. But
Just
let's be honest, like
send the data over
Ferrari appealed Canada 2019, didn't they, and tried to use Karun Chandok's like analysis on Sky. So,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I think, yeah, talk to them during the race is not on.
no.
Maybe after, if they have something clear cut, but usually the stewards have so much data.
I mean,
there was the one case, wasn't there? Austria last year, Hamilton got the grid penalty because Red Bull basically showed new evidence, which I guess.
I mean, that was
Yeah.
more. It was F1's own information. Basically, they just hadn't had it because the 360 cameras on the cars aren't synced to the global network, the live feed. They have to be downloaded and then uploaded before you can actually like see it.
Yeah.
So that was a case of just new information had been brought to light, and Red Bull was like, "Hey, have you actually seen this?" But that shouldn't be happening anyway. That when new information becomes available, it should be looked at.
Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, well, I mean, that was just Red Bull. As much as that was Red Bull being Red Bull, that was fair enough.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, you look at some of the incidents that take hours after, like, well, every time they say, "Oh, this will be investigated after the race," you know, you're waiting hours for an outcome. And in some cases, do you remember when Sainz had to wait for in Brazil 2019 for his podium for so long because they couldn't decide? I mean, it's Hamilton. It was Hamilton Albon, wasn't it? That was the main one, and there was the DRS. Was it DRS infringement or something that half the grid might have had?
No, I can't remember that bit, to be honest.
It's black and white, isn't it? Okay, I get they need to look at some more data, but for the sake of the sport, use what you've got, make the decision during the race. I think even Verstappen Hamilton, the fact we had to wait until after the restart was a bit silly. When they had,
yeah. I don't mind if, say, like in Silverstone, there was a red flag, and at that point the stewards say, "Okay, come in, show us what you got. Give us all of your information so that we can look at everything." What I don't want is like the middle of a race, the race is still going on, and they're going, "Look at this," off and whaps like an entire folder of data down on them. And stuff that's like in the last 5 laps, don't just go, "Oh yeah, we'll look at that in a minute." Like, just deal with it, get on with it. Like, I mean, okay, fair enough. The Seb Kimi incident at Austria, which was literally on the last lap. Okay, I can understand you looking at that after the race, because there's like no time between now and the end of the race to actually deal with it. But other things, it's like we see incidents happen, we see the under investigation graphic come up, and then 10, 15 laps go by, no update. And then it will just come up, no further investigation necessary.
Yeah.
If there's no further investigation, why did it take that long to reach that decision?
And even the football comparison again, even with VAR, they only have a certain amount of angles, don't they? And you can't be influenced by anyone coming over. I mean, imagine how ridiculous it would be if like managers could come over the mic. That's effectively what happens in F1.
Yeah, I mean, the equivalent is the fourth official. That the managers deal with the fourth official, and if the fourth official deems it enough, then he'll bring the ref over. I think we've only seen it a couple of times, and that's generally been down to crowd chants. But you don't deal with the ref. You don't influence the ref. You talk to an intermediary, which in this case is Michael Massey. And Michael went, "Look, I'm not interested." So at that point, you should just go, "Right, well, that's it. Game over then." Not storming up to the steward's office.
just use what you've got to make a quick decision that isn't going to, be too late to have an impact on the race. So in essence, it happens quickly so that the race, any punishment can be
served in a timely manner, and they still have a chance.
When a car's driven 30 seconds up the road and they get a 5-second penalty.
Yeah.
Or 4 hours after the race, for example, as it often is. Like the even the Raikkonen Vettel one, that was a long time after the race. Why did it need to be? It was pretty obvious, and it didn't affect the results anyway. Just slap Raikkonen with penalty, and it was pretty dangerous. So maybe a penalty point or 2
or 3.
Yeah. It's just as long as you've got stewards that are competent enough to make that sort of snap decision with the data that they've got, then why not? But do we have stewards competent enough to do that? I don't know.
I think they also struggle with the fact that it's not the same folks week in, week out. So with other sports, you have a pool of referees, because obviously you can't have one referee at 12 games that are happening at the same time. But you have a set of qualified people, and they all follow the same rule book. Now, we might have a set of qualified FIA officials. Who knows where that list is? I sure as hell can't find it on the website. And the driver stewards, what's the criteria there? We've got people driving from like the 80s making decisions on nowadays cars. They're very different cars. And that means the driving is going to be very different. So why are they getting such a, yes, I get that they've got experience of driving at high speed, close to other cars and all that. But we've got much more recent people that are probably better suited to sit in that seat and make the decisions. Like you've got Nico Hulkenberg, you've got Paul di Resta, you've got Anthony Davidson, like just people that aren't in a seat, they've driven cars that are like in the last decade sort of thing. Hell, even Alex Albon to an extent you could put in there. Brendan Hartley, like, come on, someone who's driven this sort of generation of car and has an idea of the speed at which these are going, because these are the fastest cars in Formula One. Like last year, I know that we are going faster than last year's, aren't we? So
I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think it's like dependent on tracks, but at the same, like this iteration of car is probably the fastest we'll see for a long time.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
yeah.
Can you imagine we just stuck Jenson Button in the stewards for a race? It'd be like Silverstone, racing incident. Get on with it.
Yeah, it would be so much better. But if you stuck Nico Rosberg in there. If you stuck Nico Rosberg in there, that would be the ultimate pot stirring.
You know what? We'll put Jolyon Palmer in there. He's the best one, isn't he? His analysis is always spot on, isn't it? Every single race. Put him in. And even if necessary, he can do his 17-minute analysis straight to Michael Massey, tell him why it's a racing incident, and we get on with it.
Yep.
Could have done that in the red flag.
And we'd have been happy as Larry because we'd have had a 17-minute breakdown on why it was a racing incident, and no one would complain.
Exactly. No one argues with Jolyon Palmer's analysis because it's always right every single time.
Because he just knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So here's our Turn 5 podcast lobbying of the stewards, and that is to replace all of your driver stewards with just Jolyon Palmer.
Yeah, just Jolyon Palmer in there. All will be well and sorted.
So I think that would be like the dream board, wouldn't it? You'd have Nico playing devil's advocate. You'd have Jolyon Palmer being the voice of reason, and you'd have Jenson just being like, "Can we just get on with this?" There is your high court of F1 judges. I think that needs to be a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So
definitely not biased either.
Well, no, because Jenson raced with Williams, BAR Honda, Braun, McLaren. So Jenson's raced with half the grid. Nico raced with Mercedes.
But Nico raced with half the grid.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then Jolyon Palmer raced with Renault.
So
that covers Renault off. So I suppose we
I
could.
think they're all
We
always
kind
fair.
of need, for the sake of parity, you'd need a Ferrari person in there as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think they're always fair though.
Yeah, no.
Felipe Massa, get him in there.
No, just not Paul di Resta, because you just get Hamilton getting 5-second penalties every single race.
I mean, that would be fine by me if that meant that he was just like in the middle of the pack every time. Bring it. Let's see him race.
Yeah, I could see Rosberg just stirring it up just to see what would make it.
Might be his ex-teammate, but like, 30-second penalty. Lewis.
Yeah.
See how you cope with this.
It'd just be halfway through. Oh, this race is dull. There you go, Lewis. 30-second penalty.
What for? Your wheels on the wrong side. Just because. Right. I think we've roasted the stewards to a sufficient degree. I believe they are now well done. Shall we move on to the support races at Silverstone? Yeah. Last weekend, we had Formula 2 and W Series join us. So obviously Formula 2 has the 2 sprint races and the feature race, whereas W Series just has its timed race. Should we start with Formula 2?
Safety cars.
Yeah.
5 of them in the first 2 races, pretty sure.
It was a bit hectic in places. But I mean, I don't want to say that's what you expect with Formula 2, but you kind of have come to expect it at this point. So
it wasn't actually the most exciting. I mean, it was surprisingly hard to overtake all weekend across F2 and W Series, actually.
Yeah.
Which, especially given how many safety cars there was in F2, made it, when it wasn't boring, like, particularly to the end of some of the races where there were sort of tyres falling away, it made it quite exciting. But I think in every race, I think I'm right in saying the driver that led into turn 1 won the race.
I think as far as I'm aware, yes.
I think Schwartzman went from 4th first, didn't he? Then Vachor kind of won from pole. And I think Zhou got the lead at turn 1. I think it was.
I believe so, yeah.
I think, yeah, it was either that or the pit stops.
But he only had to overtake Oscar Piastri, so because he qualified second. I say only, like that's an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I mean it was Piastri and Tictum. I think they were the consistent ones across the weekend.
Yeah,
in terms of scoring in like every race. Piastri didn't have the greatest feature race from pole, did he? He ended up behind Tictum, but they were the ones who scored well all weekend.
Yeah, I think he got fastest lap point in the feature race.
Or and the pole as well.
Yeah, that might be his points for pole, actually. So I'm just looking at because he got 15 points. So yeah, he got his pole points.
Yeah, like Zhou, for example, won the feature race, but he spun at the start of the first sprint race, which kind of ruined.
Yeah,
he still scored actually very well across the weekend.
Yeah, so he got his 25 points from the feature race, but those were the only points he scored. So yes, 25 points is a good haul, but he has lost the lead of the championship to Oscar Piastri because Piastri scored 6 points in feature race 1, 10 points feature race 1, sprint race 1, 10 points in sprint race 2, and 19 points for pole and third in the feature race. So
that Mick Schumacher consistency, isn't it?
Yeah,
that you need.
I mean, Schwartzman scored 25 points, but he got 15 points in sprint race 1 and 10 points in the feature race. So
yeah, he spun out in the second race, I think, as well. I think Tictum was the only one to score 2 podiums, wasn't he? I said that off air, so I know he was because we checked it. But I think that shows how open it is this year, which is great to see. I mean, another debate as to how many of these are actually going to graduate to F1. But I think we've got
seat limitation sort of discussion, isn't it?
I think we said off air, didn't we, when we were looking at it? It's probably a 5-way battle now for the championship. You got the Premers, Zhou, Tictum, and Vips, maybe.
Yeah. So Oscar Piastri is in first on 108, and then Yuri Vips in fifth is on 85. but Teo Porcher in 6th is on 65. So, that's a bit more of a gap. But given the 4th is Dan Ticktum on 89, there's only 4 points separating those two places. Zhou is only 5 points off the championship lead, and then Schwartzman's in 3rd on 91. It just takes one of those drivers to have a really good weekend, and they take the lead. Because I think like Piastri was, I want to say Piastri was like 4th going into the weekend.
Possibly, yeah.
Because he's scored good points this weekend. I think him and Ticktum scored the most points this weekend.
Yeah, they did. Ticktum, I think there's actually possibly even a case to be made that Ticktum has been maybe even the quickest driver this season, but he always, apart from Silverstone, he's always
he was
scored
still
well
making
in
overtakes. So
yeah, exactly. He was the one driver who was making. I think it was Nannini who stayed out for ages in the feature race, and Ticktum managed to pass him, and then Piastri was stuck behind for ages, and ended up he had a really good battle with Bashir at the end, who also did well, but Ticktum, apart from Silverstone, always seems to have like one race where something happens to him, which has kept him just about out of sort of the championship lead kind of area.
Mick Schumacher levels of consistency.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just so much. I feel like it's so much harder to win a championship with this sort of format because you need that consistency. Like Formula One, you have a bad weekend. That's only one race where you've lost out on points to your competitors. But like Zhou did, if you lose it in the first race, you've not just thrown the first race away, you've thrown the second race away as well. So yeah, tricky one. Well, where are they next joining us? Monza. So we won't see them again until September. So they're on summer holiday. I mean, I think that's pretty much covered F2, hasn't it?
Yeah, safety cars and
a couple
inability to overtake and consistency.
Which brings us nicely on the inability to overtake front to W Series. W Series don't have the additional benefit of DRS, which I feel really hindered them this weekend. But I don't want to say it was a bad race because it was close. It's just they weren't able to make the moves. So yeah, I feel like Silverstone's maybe just not the circuit for these cars, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it was Alice Powell and I still don't know how to pronounce her name, Volvend?
Yeah, Fabian Volvend.
Is that right? Yeah. Out at the front because Volvend got the jump at the start, which, by the way, like across the whole weekend, there was hardly any races where like the driver on pole actually led into turn one for some reason, but that's another thing. But yeah,
it's like the Red Bull second seat.
Exactly, yeah. But the field spread in W Series again was pretty ridiculous. I mean, Jamie Chadwick, quite surprisingly actually, was like on her own in third. I really thought, I mean, I didn't actually follow the first season too closely, but I really thought she'd kind of be dominant. But I guess that's not too bad.
Given her performance in the last races, I was a bit surprised that she was that far off the pace. In the first sort of half of the race, you think, okay, maybe she's saving tyres, going to come back for a strong period at the end because Powell and Volvend were going for it. Like Powell was really heaping the pressure on Volvend, and they were having to go. Well, there was no sort of inkling of any kind of tyre saving going on there. So it was kind of like, is she saving her tyres? And then she's going to steam it. And then the safety car came out, and you think, prime opportunity. The gap's been closed up for her. Now's the time. And she just dropped back straight away. So yeah, it was not the best weekend for Chadwick, which is surprising to say considering she still finished third.
Yeah. And then Powell got the win sort of towards the end, didn't she? It was a bit of a weird one because on the big screen, I'd never really worked out what happened, but it was at the last corner, I think.
Yeah, Volvend went wide got on the curb basically on the exit of the corner and couldn't get the power down. So Powell managed to come up the inside. They were close going into the chicane. And that's what sort of forced Volvend. I don't think forced is strong. Like she ran wide, and it was she basically did a bunny hop on the curb, and that was it. So good hard racing.
5-second penalty.
Yeah, and 2 penalty points.
I'm just looking at the finish times now. Actually, oh mate, she'd still be on the podium.
Yeah.
So, but no, W Series was okay. But yeah, I feel like Silverstone was not the track for it. Just because it's hard enough to overtake there anyway. And when you take away DRS, which is like the main overtaking assist in the other formulas that race there, then it's always going to struggle. I mean, we often comment on how many overtakes there are in Formula 2. And we didn't see that at Silverstone. Like even in Formula 1, Silverstone is hard to overtake around. Yes, there are overtakes, but they're not as commonplace as other circuits. So a much slower car with less assists for overtaking, maybe not ideal. But we'll see, because they're coming to Hungary, so we get to go again. I want to check when they're actually at Hungary though. That's the thing. Yeah, that is this weekend. Yeah, they're at Hungary with us this weekend. So we'll be able to see, because Hungary is often called Monaco without the walls. So if there's a shed load of overtaking at Hungary, then we'll know it's a Silverstone thing. But if there's also no overtaking at Hungary, we'll still sit on the fence of maybe it's circuit specific. How many overtakes do we actually see at Hungary in Formula 1?
Not a lot.
Exactly. It's mostly pit stop strategy, isn't it?
Yeah. The only one I can remember is Hamilton getting the lead from Verstappen at the end a couple of years ago, and even that was a massive tyre delta.
Yeah, that was down to the pit stop strategy.
Bottas hitting Ricciardo as well.
Yeah,
Red Bull
wing damage, didn't he?
Year before, yeah.
I was gonna say, I remember I want to say there were Toro Rossos at that point. I think it was Albon and Fiat.
When they were side by side for ages, yeah. That was pretty good.
That was a good fight, but I don't think it actually resulted in an overtake. So
yeah, just lost time.
Yeah.
And caused probably a lot of stress. Franz Tost lost what Harry has left.
Yeah.
Probably.
And probably aged another 3 years. That must be the most stressful point, is when your two teammates are like properly going at it.
Yeah.
It's like, please don't crash, this is so expensive. We haven't got any of these parts left, don't ruin this. So I mean, especially seeing as we've got the budget cap now, and Red Bull have said that the crash cost them $1.8 million. So price.
It's interesting because I remember Mercedes after the one in Imola for Bottas, it was only $1 million. Still, like, let's say half of what Red Bull roughly.
I feel Mercedes were able to salvage the engine from that, though, weren't they? Yeah, Red Bull are not confident on the state of the engine. Plus, the G's involved are very different.
Mercedes made a big thing, didn't they, about how it was going to cost them upgrades?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess that's Mercedes being Mercedes, always playing themselves down. But is that going to make a difference to Red Bull? And yeah, I think, did we mention this last week? Maybe, is it going to affect grid penalties for Verstappen possibly?
If they can't fix the power unit, potentially later in the season, yes. But they've sent the power unit back to Japan, to the Honda facility, to get them to have a look at it and give their verdict on it. So they haven't given up on it, but they weren't hopeful, given that it had gone through a 51G impact. So, yeah. could be a 5-place grid penalty for Max for an extra component somewhere. I'd say around Japan, Mexico, somewhere around that sort of region. I don't think they take it in Mexico because they love Mexico.
Yeah, and also Japan's the home race, isn't it? So
that's a good
for
point.
Honda.
But that didn't stop them giving Albon a grid penalty in Japan, did it?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, just start at the back of the grid, mate. Have a new engine, but start at the back. I think it's about time to talk about Hungary. Because with this weekend's race, it's, well, is it going to turn into Silverstone 2.0? Or are we going to have just chapter 2 of the title fight?
I mean, I'm so interested to see the dynamic. Like we said this off air, they're 100% going to put them together in the press conference. I mean, the Baku 2017 one where Vettel ran into Hamilton on purpose, that was kind of like Vettel apologised. You know, it was pretty clear cut. They made up and there was respect. I can't see that in this case, especially Max Verstappen is not going to let this go, is he? I mean, I think there was talk I think they've had discussions apparently, haven't they? Like Lewis phoned him, which
all I've heard is that Lewis was open to talks.
I think someone did say that they did phone him. I can imagine, you know, especially Lewis is experienced enough to know there has to be respect. Otherwise, it's going to happen again and again and again.
Yeah.
But Max Verstappen,
and then Norris wins the World Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, exactly. Max Verstappen, I mean, even if they have talked this over, if he's behind Hamilton into turn 1 at Hungary, for example, he's going to do a Spain, isn't he? 100%.
Oh, yeah.
And if he's, you know, if Hamilton's coming behind him in the race, like 2019, for example, he's not letting him go without a serious fight. Hamilton, I think, will be more cautious as a result of this because he'll know what's coming in terms of Verstappen's aggression. And maybe we're on like a bit of a cycle now. Go back to the start of the season. Hamilton was cautious because he knows what Verstappen's like, and then eventually he got, you know, sick of Verstappen playing on that, and it ended in a crash. Perhaps that's going to be a cycle now, if that makes sense.
Does that mean the next big crash is going to be at Monza? Because that's the only other sort of like really high speed corner like Cops. We're going to see it going into Ascari. I mean, I don't want to see it end in repeated crashes. I want to see it just develop into like a proper to and fro battle of heavyweights throwing punches. I'll be disappointed if there's another crash this weekend, but I won't be surprised. Like I wasn't surprised that there was the crash at Silverstone. I was disappointed, definitely, because that was going to be an epic race if those two had got through the first lap unscathed. But it's been coming all year. It's been brewing away just because he's been there to challenge, whereas in previous years he's not had that pace consistently. So I don't know. I want to see this as the start of chapter 2 of the saga, and it's going to be hard racing. I don't care if they bang wheels. I don't care if there's a little bit of contact. I just don't want someone doing a Danny Kvyat torpedo and ending a race just because he did it to me last week. So yeah, I don't know.
Max Verstappen's career is over.
Insert Nico Rosberg.
I mean, I can't see Max, you know, like clearly getting himself into a situation that's obviously going to cause a crash just because of what happened at Silverstone. But I mean, Red Bull aren't letting Silverstone go, are they? No. I don't think Max will. There's going to be,
but I think Jos,
aggression.
I feel like Jos will talk enough sense to him that
I don't know.
It'll be hard racing, but he won't do a Michael Schumacher. Because as much as I love Michael, he had a bit of a tendency of crashing into title rivals.
Yeah. So, perhaps, I don't know. I mean, Max is he's clever enough to know not to just take himself out of the race to take Hamilton out. But
it's can he
is
be
there going to be some
sneaky
like
enough?
tactical aggression, if you get what I mean? So he puts Hamilton in a position where, Hamilton has to back out or he's going off the track. Verstappen might get a 5-second penalty, but he won't care. For example, might see something like that.
As long as the stewards are consistent,
Here we
I'm
go again.
okay. Like if he's forcing people off the track, let's see the Norris incident again. Come on, give me 5 seconds. Give me 2 penalty points. I want to see it. Because that's the thing. Is it going to be a case of who accrues the most penalty points the fastest? Because I don't want to see a title decided on who got a race ban.
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, Max doesn't have any, does he? To be fair, I mean, I'm saying
Lewis
we're
only
saying all
has
this stuff
4.
about. Yeah, we're saying all this stuff about Max might, be aggressive, cause a crash. He doesn't have any penalty points, which I know it's not the best way of determining who's a clean driver.
No, but at the same time, he is a lot less accident prone than he was when he joined Red Bull. I remember he went through a period, I think it was like 9 races in a row where he DNF'd through incidents.
Start of 2018, yeah. I don't think he DNF'd in all of them, but he had like every weekend at the start of 2018, pretty much.
Yeah.
He had an incident, didn't he?
Like he crashed at Monaco when he should have been on pole, and yeah, it was a whole load of stuff. But since then, he came back, and I'd say he's been a much better driver since then. But I guess this weekend's going to be the big test, isn't it? Is he going to be able to keep his head?
Yeah, like the press conference will be so interesting because do you remember the one after the incident with Ocon in Brazil? Max still held a grudge, didn't he, in the press conference? And this is a title battle. I mean, it's going to be so interesting to see how they both handle it. And Christian Horner is probably going to be in one with Toto, isn't he? So that'll be a bit of trash talk.
I mean, that's always trash talk, but
yeah,
this time that I feel like there's going to be some venom behind it. So I don't know. Should we get on to our predictions? So Ben, lead us off. Pole and podium.
My pole is get in there, Lewis. And then my podium is also get in there, Lewis, with Verstappen and then Leclerc.
Interesting that Pete Bonington's taken that seat this weekend.
Yeah. He's fed up at Lewis, so he's like,
says I can do this.
Yeah. Toto, look what I've got.
Then all of the it's just the car people will come back out. So Alex, what have you got?
I mean, yeah, it is traditionally it should be a Red Bull track, shouldn't it, really? So we'll see how much the Mercedes upgrade has helped in that regard. But
and if
this is going to become clear with my it's going to become clear with my ball prediction. I'm a bit bored of the Hamilton Verstappen Bottas, so I'm going to say Charles Leclerc is going to win the race from Sergio Perez and Lando Norris. And pole is going to be, I almost want to say Leclerc because in like Monaco, they got pole, didn't they?
Yeah, it's a very similar sort of track.
I'm gonna go with Max for pole, and I think you can probably guess what my bold prediction is going to be from that.
I have an inkling.
I mean, my like
Bottas to win. Torino.
Leclerc to win isn't the most ridiculous shout, is it?
No, no, he was only a couple of laps short of it last week.
Yeah, exactly, and it should be a Ferrari track, shouldn't it? They got pole at the quickest at Monaco.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
We'll see.
Nia has sent hers in. She said Verstappen on pole and Verstappen, Leclerc and Hamilton for the podium. And Sonia has sent hers in and she said Hamilton on pole and Hamilton, Verstappen, Leclerc on the podium. So
I thought I was going to be alone putting Leclerc on the podium. I felt really clever. I felt really clever having him on the podium. Apparently not.
Would just be the race where the Ferrari's tyres are just shockingly bad again.
See, the thing is, I'm the only person that's put a certain someone on the podium. So I've said Verstappen for pole, Verstappen, Hamilton, Bottas for the podium.
I was kind of like that second place. I was torn between Perez and Bottas, but I don't know. Yeah.
So, and Chris hasn't sent his in, so 0 points. Sorry, Chris. Not sorry, but you said if someone misses it, you get 0 points. So
2 penalty points.
Shot yourself in the foot.
Even worse than Scotland at the Euros.
He's on minus
they
2 now.
turned up.
Right. We've also got one in from social media. Well, 2 in from social media / friends. Mac has sent in, or Macasance has sent in Verstappen pole, Verstappen, Hamilton, Norris podium. And my mate Matt has sent in Hamilton on pole, Hamilton, Perez, Norris podium. And he's also sent in a bold prediction, but we'll cover that when we do those. So, Alex, you've teed yourself up quite nicely here.
You can guess mine. I had to say, someone had to say it. Verstappen and Hamilton are going to collide again. I'm not going to say, well, I haven't put them on the podium, have I? But I'm not going to say who's going to retire or how much damage. But yeah, why not?
Ben, what have you gone for?
Well, I did put Ferrari back-to-back podiums, but I'm not sure if it's a bold prediction now, seeing that everyone's got it.
I mean, given the form that they're in, I'd still say that's reasonably bold. Nia has just sent hers in. George points, but not in Q3. Interesting.
It's going to be a chaotic race then.
Yeah. I need to come up with one. Who are we going to say? See, I got it right last week, so now I'm feeling like extra pressure. Can I do it 2 in a row? You know what? Both Ferraris finishing in the top 5. I'm gonna go for that. I feel like that's bold. And my mate Matt has said that George Russell will overtake Lance Stroll in the last 3 laps to secure his first points of the year. So oddly specific, but we'll take it.
I like predictions like that because it could happen. It could happen.
There is a realm of possibility there.
But if it does, you're an absolute genius.
And you really should have gone down the bookies.
Yeah.
Not that we like incentivize gambling, but
and then when it doesn't happen, we're like, well, why did you say that?
what are you being so oddly specific for? Come on, just give us a generic unexpected DNF. Knowing full well that Nia's not going to watch this episode. Right. Mazepino, Bingarino. Ben, will he finish?
Yeah.
There's 70 laps in total. So on what lap is he getting lapped first?
25.
And how many laps down?
2 laps down.
Thank God for that. Nia has said that he will finish and will first get lapped on lap 25, but will finish 3 laps down. So Alex, will he finish?
I almost want to say he won't get lapped just because of my prediction, but it's going to be, the safety car and he'll unlap himself. But yeah, he'll finish laps on a short lap, isn't it? So, 25 is probably about right, but 27, and it'll probably be one of them where it's a pit stop, won't it? But
yeah,
2 laps down. Yeah.
I did manage to figure out, because the Silverstone one is much more clear cut because the line is basically before all of the pit garages. I was like, okay, we got an exact lap this time. So I'm going to say he will finish. He will finish 2 laps down, but he will first get lapped on lap 30. Just hoping that some yellow flags slow everyone down at the start. And obviously Chris hasn't sent us in anything, because where is he? The big mystery.
He's with helmet marker.
Discussing the legal opportunities.
Yeah, he could probably do all the documents couldn't he? For Red
Yeah,
Bulls
but
to
would he
steal.
do it against Mercedes?
Oh yeah, true.
He's
Well,
like the biggest Mercedes fanboy we've
okay, then
got.
the defendant.
They just do it against Red Bull without them knowing.
Sabotage of the highest order. With all our predictions locked in, except Chris. Join us next week where we'll be covering the aftermath of a hopefully nice and clean race in Hungary, along with all of the support series action from F3 and W series. So join us again same time next week, and until then, goodbye.